Hi you guys, welcome back to my channel. Today is going to be part 4 in my Becoming a Widow series, and today's episode, I guess you want to call it, is going to be about the funeral. This is one that I have been kind of dreading. I think out of everything, this is the hardest for me. I think up to this point, most of my story I've shared with other people, friends, family, but this is something that I don't talk a lot about, and so it's still kind of hard. I think the more you talk about things, the easier it gets, and because I don't talk about this a lot, it's still pretty hard. So let's just go ahead and get started. So Patrick passed away on a Tuesday at, I believe it was 6:57 a.m., just before 7 a.m. I was not there. I was home. Lincoln had a particularly difficult night with the feedings and just being upset. But I remember just being super tired, and I feel like I had just fallen asleep again. I hadn't been asleep long when Patrick's aunt called me to let me know. They wouldn't typically call me for updates. They would usually text me. So getting a phone call was kind of different. So I knew something was off, and sure enough, it was because he passed. And I just cried in my room for a little bit. And then I went out to the rest of the house. My mom was the first person I saw and the first person I told. And she just immediately just like wrapped me in her arms, and I spent a long time just crying on the couch with her sitting next to me. My dad went into super dad mode and was making phone call after phone call, letting close friends and family know, letting my siblings know to get flights arranged for them to come, setting up an appointment with the funeral home, coordinating that with Patrick's mom, Cindy, so that way she could be there. That was something that was important to me. And just doing all the phone calls and all the things that I just couldn't, because I just couldn't. The funeral director that we went to was actually the dad of one of my best friends from high school. So that was comforting to have a familiar face, who I know does such a great job at what he does. But also I just felt, and maybe not, maybe he treats every client this way, but he just was so kind and so loving and so gentle, and patient with me, and just made me feel as close to as ease as I could on that day. We met with him the day that Patrick passed away. And my parents came with me. They wanted to support me. They made it very clear that this is my thing, and they're just here to support me. If I have questions or need help, they're here, but they would let me kind of run the show. And I appreciated that. I, at the age of 27, had never planned a funeral before, so obviously didn't know what I was doing. So it was comforting to have them there. And when you're really upset and hurting, you want your mom and your dad. So that was good. Lincoln stayed home. I don't remember who watched him, honestly. No clue. Someone did. My two brothers were home. Maybe they did. I don't know. Patrick's mom, Cindy, was there as well, and she brought her two sisters for support for her, which I think was good for her. I think she needed that. But the meeting was hard. Our funeral director, John, was his name, and he made it very clear that I am the widow. I am the closest family, and so I get the final say in all decisions. And that was difficult for me. I knew what I wanted going into it. I wanted to have a traditional funeral for him. I wanted an open casket. I wanted a viewing with said open casket. I wanted to have a traditional funeral with speakers to talk about what we in my religion believes, what happens after death, and to talk about Patrick and the life that he led and the kind of person that he was, and to honor him. And I wanted to have his close male friends and family and role models give him that last honor and be his pallbearers. And carry the casket. I wanted to have a gravesite for him, a final resting place, a tombstone with his name, a place that I could go and visit and lay flowers and talk to him, that other people could come and visit. That was something that I wanted for him. And I think having an open casket is really difficult. It's really, really difficult to see a body. It's really difficult. But I think it gives a level of closure that you don't get otherwise. Because you can see that it's just a body now, that his spirit's not there anymore. He's not there anymore. He has moved on. And it's just a body. And I think it gives another level of reverence when you see that. And just another level of like respect and reverence. And I wanted that for him. And partly because that's all I know, kind of. I've been to a lot of funerals in my day, sadly, and they've all kind of worked in similar ways. So going into it, that is what I wanted. However, we did decide to cremate him, and two different reasons that I went ahead with that. One being that it was really important to his mom. She had her reasons as to why it was important, and I understood and respected that. I won't go into those reasons here because it's not my place, and that's her story to tell, not mine. But she explained them, and I respected them and understood them. And I think being a mom now myself could understand her hurt a little bit better than I would have before. Because I was then left a single mom to a little boy. And she herself was a single mom to a little boy. And he was kind of all she had. And she lost him. And so I can just imagine the hurt and pain. And so her wishes were important to me. John, the funeral director, John, kept telling me, like, this is your call. You have the final say. Not wanting me to feel pressured into doing what Cindy wanted. And I am a people pleaser. Ask anyone who knows me well, and they can tell you I am a people pleaser. Like, I tend to put other people's wants and needs ahead of my own, for sure. I think that he thought I was switching from a traditional funeral to a cremation because of her. And that was a big part of why. But in the back of my mind, I also had doubts as to what Patrick would have wanted. Because we were never able to have that conversation, me and him. He was very rarely in a place where he could talk about dying to me and admit that he was dying. Most of the time he was very much like, I'm going to beat this, I'm going to beat this, I'm going to be fine. But in those rare moments, it was not a time for us to talk and plan a funeral. It was not the right moment. And so I wondered if he had talked to his mom about what he would want and talked to his aunts about what he would want. And at the end of the day, the funeral's about him. I wanted a closed casket or an open casket regular funeral because I did want it to be about him. And I think it makes more of an impact seeing a casket and does bring that level of reverence, more so than an urn. However, at the end of the day, it's about him and his wishes, and I wasn't totally sure what he wanted. The whole time, I felt rushed, and it wasn't because anyone in the room was rushing me. No one was. In fact, they were all kind of telling me, like, take your time. I know this is hard. But my people-pleasing ways just went into overdrive, and I just felt like I'm inconveniencing everyone because I didn't know what I wanted. It was totally new and different to me, and I wanted to make the right choice, but I didn't want to take too long because I felt like I was already taking so long with everything else, and everyone told me it was okay, but I just felt pressure that I put on myself. I picked a plain box, something really simple. I decided to go ahead and split the ashes with her. Cindy ended up getting the same thing. I don't know who picked first, but we both liked it. So ordered 2 of those. Talked about what we would need because of it being a cremation. It's not your typical funeral, and so don't usually, it's more of a memorial service than a funeral, and that funeral home doesn't always staff those unless it's requested. And I knew I'd be having it at my church building. That would be free. I would be doing the program. Like I kind of had a handle on everything else. So that process wasn't super expensive because I kind of handled the memorial myself. And when I say myself, I mean my church did. I've put in my input here and there, but really they kind of took over, which I appreciated. And after our meeting, because he was getting cremated, even though he came right from the hospital, I needed to identify the body. That was the first time I had seen him since he passed. It was awful. Awful. That whole time was awful. There were some other things that happened in that moment that I don't want to talk about. But I did eventually get a moment alone with him. And I held him one last time. And I said my goodbyes. And I told him I loved him. And I gave him one last kiss and then walked away. Never to see him again. The next day, I went to the mall by myself to find an outfit to wear to his funeral memorial service and to find an outfit for Lincoln. I went to Gymboree to get an outfit for Lincoln to wear. I would buy a lot of his clothes there. So I went in and there was 2 ladies working there and they were chatting and having a good time and asked me if I needed help finding anything. And I completely broke down. And it was the first time like I full on ugly cried, broke down in public. And they didn't really know what to do and how to handle me. And I told them that I was here to buy an outfit for my son, who is 2 months old, to wear to his father's funeral. And they gave me the sympathy looks and immediately was like, okay, let me look in the back. We still might have some of our old Easter stuff, like some of that might be nice and buttoned down and whatever. And she pulled out a shirt that she was able to find back from like their Christmas. And it was one that I actually already owned for him. And I thanked them, but let them know that wasn't what I was looking for. And they suggested a few other stores. And so I just walked around the mall crying for a little bit. Never found anything that day. I did get a dress for myself. But that night, I think it was that night, me and my brother took a drive up to Bye Bye Baby. It was like an hour away. And I found a, like, almost like what I'm wearing today, actually, shirt for him. I remember it being like a 6-month size, and he was 2 months old, 9 weeks old. So it was definitely big, but it's like, it's fine, this will work. And so that's what he wore. So that was Wednesday. Thursday, I actually went back to work. And my boss was like, look, you don't have to do this. I had been scheduled to go back after the baby on that day. And when they learned, it's a family-owned business, and when they learned what was happening, and they were like, you don't have to come back. Like, take your time, like, whatever you need. And I was like, no, I think I need this. I think I need to get out. I think sitting at home is really hard for me. And so I went, and I was okay most of the day. But asked off for the rest of the week. It's like, I think I need tomorrow off. There's a lot more involved in planning a funeral than I originally thought. And so she was like, of course. So Friday I took off work and went to get all the flowers. Went to a local florist that I would go to for other things, and that same high school best friend whose father was the funeral director, her stepdad is a florist. So I went to him, and he was awesome. I mean, he's awesome. I think he had met Patrick a couple times, if I remember right, and knew the whole situation. And was so kind and just was like, how much do you have to pay? What do you need? What do you want? What do you need? And how much do you have to pay? And he gave me like twice as much flowers, and he did a beautiful job. And I didn't really know what I wanted per se, but he did an amazing job, and it was beautiful. And the day of the funeral, my siblings were all in town. My younger brother, 2 brothers, were already at home for like spring break, so they just extended their stay. And then my sister and my other brother flew in, and so we had the whole family together. We had a viewing, but since he was cremated, it wasn't really a viewing. I don't know what you would call it then. I don't know. But in the one room, I had a table with his ashes in the middle, like a wreath of flowers around it, a couple of big bouquets, and then I had pictures displayed of all these pictures from the time we grew up, pictures of us together, and it's kind of where the family congregated there. So people would come in, sign a guest book, look at the pictures, give their condolences, and then go into the chapel. where we had the actual memorial. And the one thing that I wish I could have changed that day was I was holding Lincoln to begin with, and when Cindy came in, I kind of passed him off for a little bit so she could hold him, because I know how difficult that day is, and he's such a bright light and happy baby, and just babies make you smile, and so I know she needed a little boost, and so I kind of passed him off to her briefly, and then somehow he got passed to this woman who I had never met until that day, and honestly don't even know her name. Don't really know much about her. She was like, I guess, a family friend back from Michigan. I don't really know. I really don't know. But she held him the entire time. And there were many times where I just wanted my baby back. I needed him. My sister was kind of like on call to be on baby duty. So that way I was free to do anything that I needed to do, and my family just didn't want me to have to worry about Lincoln on top of everything else I had going on, which I appreciated that, but I needed him. And I didn't have him because this woman was holding him, and I should have just gone up and taken him like he was my child. I have every right to do that, but I didn't want to. I don't know. Grief does funny things to you and messes with your head, and I just didn't want to stir up drama or make a scene, or I just felt like I don't know, I felt like I didn't have the right to do that, but as his mother, I 100% did. But the service itself was nice. We had one of his good friends who's also a member of our church. He worked with him actually doing solar sales. I had asked him to speak about our beliefs in life after death, and what happens after we die, and plan of happiness and all that. And then I gave his mother time to speak. And then I actually spoke, and writing my talk, writing what I wanted to say was really hard. It was hard saying it, but I'm glad I did. I don't regret for a second going up there. I needed that moment. And I tried to instill everything that he was to me and to his friends, and I think I did a decent job of representing him. I hope I did. And then we gave time for anyone else who wanted to speak or say anything. And then afterward, we had a luncheon that was put on by the women of our ward, my church congregation, a ward. Really don't remember any of it. I don't remember what food was served. I don't remember who was there. I remember a few people coming up and talking to me. But for the most part, it was a blur. I do remember wanting to get a picture with his dad and their family, and then just, a couple of family pictures, but other than that, I really don't remember. So I'm sorry if I said something wrong or out of order or forgot a major part. There's just so much about that time that I just don't remember because it was such a blur. And there's also a lot about that time that I'm purposely leaving out. I feel weird saying I hope you enjoyed it, but I hope you learned something from this. The next episode will be the Q&A. If you have questions, now is your time to ask because it's coming up. Comment below, send me an email, send me a private message on Instagram, Facebook, whatever. Ask me your questions because I want to answer them for you. Thank you again for watching and sitting through this with me. These episodes have not been easy to film, but it definitely has been healing for me. And so I appreciate your time and willingness to listen. And I hope that somehow it helped you as well. So thank you guys, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.